I'd like to add a little bit of lightness to begin this session. So a lot of people say, I can't live without you and romanticize our feelings. But in actuality, thousands live without love, but none of us can live without water. That being said, welcome to the Water Forum of IESL's celebration of World Water Day 2024. The World Water Day is an annual observance conducted by United Nations, celebrated every 22nd of March. And this day is commemorated to highlight the importance of fresh water, to raise awareness of the 2.2 billion global population living with no access to clean, safe water, and to raise awareness of the continued battle in tackling the global water crisis. In connection to the global celebration, the Water Forum here at IESL is also campaigning for World Water Day 2024 by hosting this workshop under the theme Water for Peace, focusing on the pivotal role water plays in the stability and prosperity of the world. To signify the formal inauguration of this session, I'd like to invite the following invitees and dignitaries for the traditional lighting of the oil lamp. Unfortunately, only a few of us are present here lively. Many of them will be joining us virtually through Zoom. So just to mention them, we are joined by the president of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, Professor Ranjit Dissanayake, who's out of Colombo, but he's joining us virtually. And immediate past president of the institution, Dr. Kamal Laksari, is also joining us virtually. He's present here on screen. And for those that are present here lively, I'd like to invite Dr. Hilmi Sally, the panelist for today, Engineer Badra Kamaladasa, chairperson of Water Forum, Engineer Dr. H. Mantri Tilaka, Engineer BASS Pereira, and the Vice President of IESL, Engineer Kamala Gunawardena. And from our sponsors, I'd like to invite Infotech Ideas, Engineer Cicero Kumara, and from Mahaveli Consultancy Bureau, Engineer Chandana Edrisuriya, and Sri Lanka Water Partnership, Engineer SGG Rajkumar, and also representing the Water Forum, I'd like to invite Engineer Gamini Tantri to light the traditional oil lamp. And I've seemed to have missed a very important person, the moderator for today, Engineer Frankie Pereira, to join us in the lighting of the oil lamp. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats now. The session that we have planned for you today is a very lively, rich knowledge sharing session that we will dig deep into the international and the national stance in terms of tackling the global water crisis, as well as how water plays a pivotal role as a catalyst in promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. In addition to the audience that we have here today, we do have 40-something odd audience joining us, as well as presenters joining us virtually through Zoom. And the organizers have a little message for the virtual audience, as since there will be a certificate issued for your presence here. Everybody who's present virtually are requested to mark their attendance. Dialing here will share a Google form in the chat box. So everybody's advised to mark their attendance in the sheet, which will be shared at the end of the session. So please do keep an eye out for that. Before we move on to the official proceedings, I'd like to invite our beloved immediate past president of the IESL, Dr. Kamal Luxury, to welcome this gathering and to present the objectives of today's workshop. He will be joining us virtually. Dr. Kamal, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
No. Okay, right. Yeah, right. Thank you, Ruchini. First of all, let me apologize for my inability to attend in person today. Due to my work commitments, I had to be at my workplace, little away from Colombo. So, and let me welcome all of you formally in this IESL event of the World Water Day. Our eminent panel members led by the keynote speaker, Dr. Hilmi Sally, and I again apologize for not recognizing all the other members. Then the distinguished invitees, Water Forum Chairperson, Dr. Engineer Mrs. Badra Kamaladasa, and the committee members, all the representatives from our sponsors, President Professor Ranjit Disanak, I think he's online, President-elect Engineer Granny Jayalath and the council members, Chief Executive Officer, Deputy Executive Officer and the staff, all the members, ladies and gentlemen. So let me formally welcome all of you for this IESL event of the World Water Day 2024, organized by the Water Forum, the water arm of IESL. This is our 8th year we conduct this event after establishing the Water Forum. World Water Day, I think it was mentioned earlier, falls on 22nd March of each year. And we in IESL Water Forum marks it with an event like this in a day close to the 22nd, depending on the our schedule. And we also know that there's a national level event conducted by the Water Ministry and the National Water Supply and Drainage Board that will be on 22nd March in Colombo, and will be conducted in Colombo. So if we look at why we have a special day for water, there are several reasons. Let me elaborate. Water is the most important natural resource and will be one of the most precious items in the future. It says water is the foundation of the life on earth. And also it says no water, no life, no blue, no green. It also says that future world wars will be fought on water. Due to these reasons, it shows the need of sparing a day at least to concentrate on water issues. World World Water Day dates back to 1992 when the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development recommended the need of an international observance for water. So as a result, the UN General Assembly designated 22nd March 1993 as the World Water Day. And then since then, we have been conducting an event annually. So if you look at this is the 31st World Water Day program from the inception. And again, if you look at the significance, World Water Day is an international observance and it's a day giving an opportunity to learn more about water-related issues. It's a day to make a difference for the members of the global population who suffer from water-related issues. It's a day to prepare how we could manage water in the future. It's a day to remind people about the significance of fresh water and to promote sustainability for freshwater resources management. And at last but not least, is the day to celebrate water. So in each year, the UN Water, the global entity that coordinates the UN work on water and sanitation, sets a theme for the World Water Day. So this year, 2024, they have selected the theme as Water for Peace. So that brings into focus the fragility and conflict that water insecurity could cause, but also the value and power of water to advance quality for men and women, reduce poverty and promote peace and security. The transformation of water security is therefore essential for a safe, just and sustainable future. Water systems are complex, shaped by physical, ecological, social, economic, and political influences. They are closely bound to the future of food systems, the energy transmission, human health, and nature. As climate change continues to cause greater water risks, it has become clear that water security depends on both climate change mitigation and adaptation. It is only through cooperation for peace and security that we'll be able to achieve this. So this is the background to this year's theme, and I think we will hear more in the course of this program. So today, as the ISL program, we have invited the veterans in the water field. I'm not going to name individually again, and we will soon listen to them. They will be talking in line with this year's theme and also in relevant to Sri Lankan perspective. So without further ado, let me welcome all of you formally for this important event of the ISL and move to the proceedings. Thank you, and I wish a successful program today. Thank you. Ruchini, over to you.
Thank you, sir. And with the objective that he mentioned, keeping them in mind, as well as the theme for today, Water for Peace, let us continue to the official session. To commence the session, before we start on with the presentation, I'd like to introduce the moderator for the workshop today. He is Engineer Frankie Pereira. Allow me to give a small introduction to him before I invite him onto the head table. Engineer Frankie Pereira retired after 29 years of service to the Irrigation Department in 2022. Prior to his retirement, he has served as the head of institute at the International Training Institute of Irrigation and Water Management at Kothmale, head of legal and land divisions as well. He has also been engaged as a consultant engineer for CARE projects for Ministry of Public Administration and as a construction manager for hydropower projects in Rwanda. Presently, he's engaged as a consultant civil engineer for the Sri Lanka Transport Board. He's also a visiting lecturer for ITUM Moratuwa, Rajarata University, and for SLADA. And he has served as a senior lecturer for KITI DAP at the International Water Management Unit from 2015 till 2022. He's a member of IESL and the Institute of Management and Sri Lanka Institute of Training and Development. And he holds a fellowship at CIPM as well as IESL. He's also a distinguished Toastmaster and a recipient of the Anton Awards by IESL in the year 2015. I'd like to invite Engineer Frankie to take his place on the head table as the moderator for today's session. Along with him, I'd like to invite all the panelists and the speakers of this session that are present here in person to join our moderator at the head table as well. Panelist Dr. Hilmi Saleh, Engineer Dr. H. Mantri Tilaka, Engineer BASS Pereira. Kindly join him on stage. And we'd also like to mention Engineer Dr. Misaka Hetiarachi, who is making a virtual presence and joining from Queensland, Australia. Without further ado, let's move on to the session. The first speaker, the panelist, Dr. Hilmi Saleh. Before I call him upon to the podium, I'll give a small introduction to him. Dr. Hilmi Saleh is presently leading a mostly retired existence in Colombo. He counts 40 years of international professional experience in agriculture, water, and natural resource management. He has held leadership and representational positions in research, capacity strengthening, project and program management, and consulting in 30 countries in Africa, Asia, and Europe, including 25 years of resident experience outside his native Sri Lankan environment. Since 2012, following his retirement from full-time employment with the International Water Management Institute, where he was a long-serving staff member, he has undertaken consulting assignments, notably program and project reviews and evaluations on behalf of various clients, including the African Development Bank, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the Swedish International Development Corporation, and the International Water Management Institute as well. He has carried out peer reviews, international scientific journals such as Water Resource Research, Irrigation Science, Climatic Change, Water Alternatives, Irrigation and Drainage, Agricultural Water Management, and Physics and Chemistry of Earth. He currently devotes considerable time to running a non-profit organization called Initiatives in Development of Entrepreneur Approaches and Strategies, which he chairs. He is also the chairman of the board of directors for Infotex Ideas, a multidisciplinary development consultancy company based here in Colombo, and serves as a scientific advisor to the International Foundation for Sciences. He also has acquired a knack for languages as he is very fluent in English and French and has a broad interdisciplinary publication record in both languages. Water for Peace, role of water in fostering stability and prosperity within our country. His topic, please welcome Dr. Hilmi Saleh.
Thank you. My presentation, are you from there, presentation? Are you loading from here or from there? From here. Should I minimize this name? Okay. All right. Yeah, okay, no. Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay, well, I think, yeah. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to the IESL Water Forum for inviting me to participate in this important session. And I hope my my contribution, which I've entitled Water as a Catalyst for Conflict, but also a conduit to peace, will contribute to a lively and productive afternoon's discussion on this important topic. So let us start off with some very often encountered media headlines. For example, there is a lot of discussion and debate. Is there really a water crisis? In Sri Lanka, particularly, even our dry areas have a nearly 1,000 millimeters of annual precipitation. So one part of the water community would say, look, I mean, we need to stop infrastructure expansion and instead conserve and restore ecosystems. Others will say irrigation is, using up too much water. People will suffer. People won't have water for other needs. Some others would say, there is overuse of water. So we need to price water because that happens because water is practically free. We need to price it. Of course, people also, climate change is always a useful culprit these days. And the most dramatic kind of headline we see often, as Dr. Kamal Laksiri also referred to, is this prospect of water wars. So how much of this is true? How much of this is sort of exaggerated? So in this presentation, I'd like to first start by trying to sift out what is fact. So I've divided my presentation into 4 main parts. Firstly, I'd like to review and unpack some of the facts and issues pertaining to water availability and water access. Again, as the past president referred to, water is extremely vital for sustaining human life. However, most of it, 98% of water, is saline. Just 2.5% is fresh water. So which means that if the Earth's water resources are represented by these 100 cups, there's just less than 2.5 cups, which are actually fresh water and utilizable by a human being. And even of that, almost 2/3 or more than 2/3, 70% of that is trapped in glaciers, ice packs, etc. About 30% in deep groundwater. So of those 2.5 glasses of water, we are left with just 1 sip, 2 sips, 3 sips. So that is the resource we are left with. That is the resource that we have to manage and that we owe ourselves and our future generations to look after and harness. So in terms of numbers, so these are the numbers that we see. So although the water volume on the planet is nearly 1,400 million cubic kilometers, of that, just 0.1 million, that is 100,000 cubic kilometers, not 1 million, not 10 million, 100,000 out of 1,400 million is fresh water that is available to us. And what is little Sri Lanka's part in this? Its annual surface water, renewable surface water resources are just 52 cubic kilometers, absolutely minuscule. Nevertheless, absolutely vital for us. So, unfortunately, the available fresh water in the world is not equally distributed. They are concentrated in a few of countries, as this map will illustrate. Nearly 1/5 of the world's population live in water-stressed areas with access to less than 1,000 cubic meters of water per year. So this naturally has an impact on people's access to clean water. It hampers economic development as well. Water has multiple users and users. There is water for drinking water and sanitation, no doubt, water for ecosystems, services, water for food production, water for economic development, and for energy. So up front and center, the user at the center of all these users are people. That's us. So we know that the demand for fresh water is continuously increasing with population demographic increases, resulting in greater competition among users, and puts a tremendous strain on the limited resources of our fresh water. So let's just spend a little time looking at what water scarcity and water stress mean. Scarcity in very general terms is a result of a mismatch between supply and demand. It could be caused by excess demand or insufficient supply or lack of access. It could also be the result of an intrinsic handicap in terms of availability of natural resources or limitations, but sometimes even a purposeful business strategy. In very general terms, scarcity can be provoked as a deliberate strategy. Nevertheless, scarcity has a significant impact ultimately on people's socioeconomic outlook and human behavior. In terms of water scarcity, normally we distinguish between two kinds of scarcity. The physical kind, which means we might not have the demand for water for human and ecosystems needs exceeds its supply. But there's also economic water scarcity, which means that even if there's physical availability, because of inadequate investment in water infrastructure, in technology to draw this water and make use of it for useful purposes, there is actually, so that's our inability, which means that there's water which we term economic water scarcity. Water stress, on the other hand, is a slightly more broad and inclusive concept. It includes definitely the physical aspect of water scarcity, but also it takes into account aspects such as water quality, environmental flows, as well, and issues of management and water governance. This is an interesting graphic from the FAO, which shows countries that are water stressed. So although you'll notice that on 18th or 19th place figures Sri Lanka. Now, how is that possible? Sri Lanka is well endowed with water resources, etc. So what it's saying is we might be well endowed with water resources, but we are actually withdrawing almost 90% of that for various purposes. So these really exemplify the challenge that we face as water management, as water professionals in this country. So this is a reflection not only of the growing competition for water, but also the conflicts between water users and the declining standards of reliability and service. So having dealt with sort of some of the basic facts and figures around water, let's move and try to understand what some of these underlying reasons for water scarcity and water-related conflicts are. Water conflicts typically refer to disputes associated with access to or control over water resources, usually resulting from competing or opposing water user interests. They could arise for various reasons, because water is actually scarce, or it could be contaminated or poorly allocated among users, so creating frustration among a certain group as who think a certain other group is more favored. So throughout history, we have evidence of a wide range of water conflicts. But what we also observe is that they are very rarely over water alone. Water often forms part of a larger territorial dispute or a fight over resources or for some other strategic advantage. Right this week, I think in the newspapers, there was this problem in Bangalore, in India, where they say India's Silicon Valley is facing a water crisis. So that occurs because there is a conflict over the sharing of the waters of the river Kaveri, which originates in Karnataka, but is also used by Tamil Nadu. So the two states are fighting over the allocation and use of this resource. Sometimes, as you can see on the picture on the right-hand side, ending in violence. So water conflicts, let us try to sort of categorize them. There are various categories of water conflict. Firstly, water can act as a trigger for violence and conflict, as a threat multiplier. And we've seen even killings have occurred over water. In Iran, where in this particular river basin in the city of Isfahan, where I, in fact, personally had the opportunity to work over several years, advising on this particular issue. Obviously, our advice was either completely wrong or not cared for, because end result you can see is the riots and difficulties that have arose in this particular city over the water of this Zayende River. And also in certain parts of sub-Saharan Africa in particular, we see conflicts between different users, quite often between farmers and pastoralists. So this is unfortunately overlaid with worsening ethnic and religious tensions as well in this part of the world. So that's where water acts as a trigger. A second category is water where it can be used as an actual weapon of conflict, where armed groups can, let's say, poison water supplies to a region, to a city, where unfortunately Israel has flooded Palestinian olive groves with sewage. So those are instances where water itself is used as a weapon of conflict. Water can also become a casualty of conflict, which means that there are wars and violence taking place for other reasons, but water becomes part of the collateral damage of those conflicts. Most recently, as we can witness, the conflict in the Middle East, in Palestine, where there have been attacks on water infrastructure. So that's as far as, that's one aspect where you can actually attack hardware. But increasingly, water can become a casualty in terms of software, where Egypt in particular launched a cyber attack on Ethiopian water systems in protesting against the Ethiopian construction of their Grand Renaissance Dam upstream in the upstream waters of the River Nile. So these are different kinds of conflict where water can act as a trigger. Water is actually a delivery system for mayhem and war, and water suffers as a casualty. There are also different scales of conflict. Firstly, conflict at an international level, where it's between two countries that share a transboundary river or a groundwater aquifer. And it usually occurs when one of the countries, usually the upstream one, starts developing water resources infrastructure without consultation or the agreement of the downstream country. There is no discussion on how to deal with the impacts that are created as a result of these developments. And sometimes adequate international or institutional mechanisms are absent. Fortunately, in some of most of the international river basins, there are river basin organizations and commissions that have been set up to address and particularly these issues, kinds of issues. At a different scale are what we would term intranational or internal conflicts within a country. Could be between two different parts or parties in a country. So what happens is, why that really arises, because their institutional mechanisms within the country may not be able to cope with the changes that occur as a result of various interventions. So conflicts can arise between regions, between administrative districts, or between different user groups, right? Or different tribes. Water conflicts are not something recent. This database of water conflicts has includes almost 1,700 instances of water conflicts dating from as far back as 4,500 years ago. So these are some of the more ancient ones on record and some of the more recent ones that, as can be expected, relate to the conflicts in the Ukraine and the Middle East. And in this database, there's also 3 references to Sri Lanka, where water in two of these instances, water has suffered as a casualty during the ethnic conflict. And more recently, in 2013, where water occurred as a trigger in Atupas Mela, and unfortunately also ended in loss of life. So this is the whole range of conflicts that arise and exist. And what we notice is that water conflicts are showing an increasing trend as populations grow, as climate change alters precipitation patterns around the world. Conflicts are unfortunately, the frequency is unfortunately likely to increase. Especially over the last 4 or 5 years, as you can see, there seems to have been an increase. But interestingly, you can see that while we all locked down in COVID in 2020, you can't see that 2020, even water conflicts seem to have taken a backseat. They've also gone into lockdown. So water conflicts also have a geopolitical dimension. We've discussed how water withdrawals, conflicts can occur when one country withdraws water seemingly at the expense of another. So Egypt, the River Nile is a classic example where Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan have historically had long-standing disputes over the Nile water resource. And each party has their own grievances, fair enough. Egypt depends for almost 85% of its water resources on the River Nile. On the other hand, Ethiopia would think we have a right to that water because 85% of the water originates in their country. They have built a huge, the grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam upstream to produce, I don't know how many gigawatts of energy. And Egypt is naturally concerned that it would be deprived of its access to the Nile's waters. Fortunately, the disagreement has not turned into open conflict, although Egypt, which is the more powerful, I would say, in military terms, has brandished threats about military threats against any dams in the upstream Nile waters. Just to continue, other international water conflicts also are prevalent, mostly in the Middle East, Central Asia. But fortunately, what we observe is there are transboundary water sharing arrangements or agreements that are in place and have helped to reduce the risk of international conflicts. They try to promote an attitude of the best benefit for everybody. So fostering in what we might call a responsible water stewardship. But not all shared international rivers have such treaties. Some are still lack such agreements and treaties. So there is maybe they might develop into hotspots in the future. So to conclude this chapter on conflicts, so what we see is the potential for moving from a situation of cooperation where there's plenty, everybody is happy with what the water they have, to a situation where there's tension, where there's dispute, open conflicts, and hopefully not war. So we see that water has a potential to become an irritant. It can make good relations bad and make bad relations worse. But thankfully, water also has a unifying role. And history records that water disputes do get resolved, even among the most bitter enemies, and even as conflicts over other issues are rampant and continue. You'll see some examples as we move ahead. So thankfully, there are more examples of cooperation than conflictual events. So there is hope. So let's move on to see how we can transition from a situation of cooperation, of confrontation to cooperation. How can all of us share in the benefits of water-related development? So coming back to this famous water wars hypothesis, it is colloquially used in the media as a shorthand to describe water disputes or disputes over water. It's unfortunately been fueled by pronouncements from very prominent politicians, academics, and journalists. But again, want to insist that research from INI and other organizations and people have found that water-related conflicts, thankfully, especially in international context, are less likely. Cooperation and collaboration are more common. And in most of the world's 300 odd shared basins, treaties and agreements are in place. So let's look at some of the factors that can help us to move from conflict to cooperation. So we said wherever treaties and agreements are in place, this provides a mechanism, a capacity to foster cooperation, understanding, resolve disputes, and deal with the pressures of uncertainty and change. So, Indus River Commission, which was established in 1960, has survived wars between Pakistan and India. The Mekong Committee has outlived 20 years of the Vietnam War. So these are positive examples, as I said, where although there'll be conflicts and misunderstandings on a whole range of issues, territorial disputes, water issues tend to get resolved. But in the absence of an effective institutional mechanism, the changes, the developmental interventions in the river basin could provoke tensions and turmoil. And that is why the conflicts, disputes in internal or intra-national contexts tend to, although they are given less publicity and have a less buzz in the media, they unfortunately are festering, are becoming more and more prominent. So basically, I would say it is a reflection of sort of institutional failure. Taking a more positive view, let us see how we can focus on some win-win strategies. How do we go about this? One common feature of almost all resolved disputes over time and over countries and over regions is that negotiations or successful negotiations have followed a needs-based paradigm instead of a rights-based model. So we focus on needs rather than the rights of certain sectors of stakeholders. So what does a needs-based approach mean? It encourages stakeholders to take the view of a greater common good. How is it that we can all benefit? Rather than me, let's talk of us and ourselves. So can we move from a very personalized, narrow, parochial point of view to take a more positive, integrated approach for equitable water allocation and benefit sharing? So it's not only developing the water resources, not only allocating the water resources, but how do we share the benefits that accrue thereof or therefrom? So here we see that we can indeed ensure that both equity and efficiency of water use can both or should both be considered as key performance indicators, particularly under conditions of water scarcity. So the first step, in my view, in conflict resolution and cooperation is to get our facts straight. Get our basic facts about shared water resources, be they about hydrology, current water use, environmental needs, and basic development potential. So it makes a huge difference whether a basin is open for development, whether there is scope for development, or whether a basin is closed, which means that all the available water has been already been committed. And if you want to further developments are not really possible, you need to reallocate from one use to another. So understanding that is absolutely essential, because otherwise we might be embarking on a project or a program that is just not tenable. The absence of data leads to all kinds of perceptions and assertions, and it becomes a source of frustration. And there's so much advances in information technology, in data science, that we can harness to help us gather this information and make use of this information. It will enable us to reject, emotions, agenda-driven troublemakers and hate mongers. It will inform and empower the negotiating parties and provide a solid foundation for knowledge-based decision-making, joint vision of water sharing and cooperation. So this shows how, we can use data, whether it's from remote sensing, geographical information systems, water modeling, and how we can translate that into usable data in terms of charts, tables, and maps. Who knows, in the near future, a typical IE's office will, instead of having blackboards and whiteboards and charts, maybe having pixels on their boards. Data is necessary, is essential, but not sufficient. There is more to water than what we can see and feel, which is the physical water. There's also the water that we calculate, that we price, we attribute economic and ecosystem value to. Water has an emotional dimension as well. It's associated sometimes with power, with attributes, with historical sort of significance, national sovereignty, and it also has a spiritual role, a symbol of purity and cleansing. So quite often, decisions about water take into account the first two categories of these water types. Neglecting the latter two could sometimes create a crisis of legitimacy and credibility. And water conflicts, notably of the intranational type, are often related to neglect of these last two types of water, the emotional, spiritual kind, which we as technicians and professionals might not really take cognizance of. We are comfortable with what we can measure, etc. But these are underlying factors that we need to be aware of, and really encourages us to take a very broad, multidisciplinary approach when it comes to management and development of our water. My last topic is, having moved hopefully from confrontation to cooperation, how can water act as a conduit for peace? We are all agreed that water is an absolutely vital resource. It is also a common concern that cuts across a variety of barriers of class, creed, society. It has proved to be a powerful instrument to promote dialogue about a shared future among countries, among states, among users and sectors. And the language of water can transcend conventional language barriers. So we shall see a few examples from our own country. The pintalia, traditional clay pot placed at prominent places in our villages, is a long established Sri Lankan tradition that signifies, a welcoming sign, a symbol of peace, or water for peace. The Senanayaka Samudra is a good example where water is shared between, the water have been harnessed and developed for the benefit of the three communities, the Sinhala, Tamil, and Muslim in the Eastern Province. And here we see a brilliant example of how the water stored in the upper reaches, predominantly inhabited by the majority Sinhalese, are shared with the predominantly Muslim and Tamil communities in the lower coastal areas in the Battlefield district. It's showing that what a powerful factor water and a role water can play in maintaining peace and harmony. Another good example from about 20 years back is from Natchadua, when there was a release of water from the Natchadua tank for a last life-saving irrigation to the farmers in the Giants tank, low down, where it's mainly inhabited by a Tamil population. So this is a very powerful gesture of humanity and recognition. And in return, as a gesture of goodwill and thanks, the Tamil community actively participated and contributed to the Poson celebrations in the following year. So these examples show the pivotal role that water can play in promoting peace, understanding, and fostering a common Sri Lankan identity. Well, a little bit about recent and current developments in the country. So we know that the Mahawali Development Program, one of the largest, if not the largest, multi-purpose water development program undertaken in the recent past, which apart from the hydropower dimension, it was meant to divert excess water in the Mahawali Ganga Basin to the dry zone areas of the NCP, northern and eastern provinces. But the reality is that even 50 years after its commencement, several sub-projects, mainly in the north, still remain incomplete. So the communities in the northern dry zone, the driest and needy areas still wait for water. You can ask why. Sorry, the slide has gone up. Why? Because the North Central Canal Province project, which was the main agricultural component to fulfill this diversion role of the Mahawali Development Program, is still not been totally implemented. A few details about the NCP canal. It's meant to transport almost water from the south to north over almost 200 kilometers through gravity as well as water lifting. Implementation has tragically been delayed due to unsubstantiated objections, such as the exorbitant cost of water lifting, even the contesting the adequacy of water for the diversion, influenced by certain sections that have unduly influenced the decision-making processes. On the other hand, there is also a certain fear that of loss of control of land in the north if the command area on the NCP canal is declared as a Mahawali area under the Mahawali Act. So there's a bit suspicion and lack of understanding, both north and south. Added to that, of course, there's been the 30-year civil conflict, which have added to the delays, plus very, very stringent environmental regulations imposed by both the Wildlife Department and the Forest Department as well. Be that as it may, the target area of the NCP canal has a potential to become a major export agricultural zone of Sri Lanka. So with the potential to improve living standards, not only for the farming communities who live in the northern parts, but to contribute to the socioeconomic growth and prosperity of the entire nation. So here is a case where we believe the NCP canal project needs to be given the priority it deserves and implemented in good faith, in a transparent and collaborative way by professionals from both the north and the south, with support from the relevant government departments and the beneficiary communities, of course. So the NCP Canal, thereby being a powerful example, a powerful vehicle of becoming a water for peace canal and playing a major role in reconciliation efforts in the country. So to recap, so at a global level, as I wrap up, at a global level, fresh water we've seen is an absolutely vital element for human life. Human activities are closely connected to and influenced and conditioned by the availability and quality of water. Water we've seen is a limited resource and unevenly distributed. Climate change, demographic growth combine to exert additional pressure on these resources. Water scarcity we've seen can lead to tensions, conflicts, and at all levels, regional, local, and international. Remember, the water conflict continuum that we saw. Water conflicts occur when there's a mismatch between demand and supply, or because there is dispute over the control and access to the resources, or because water management institutions are weak or missing. Gradual reductions in time in the quality and quantity of water can lead to instability of a region, can deplete the health of a population, and obstruct economic development. And to repeat, tensions and conflicts over water sadly now occur more frequently at subnational level rather than an international level. So these are lessons, I think, for our country, where we don't have shared water, we don't have transboundary issues with other countries. So we have to look inwards and find solutions, drawing on experiences from outside. So in terms of Sri Lanka, yes, it is rich in water resources, but has issues with water stress. It is also compounded by the fact that it is a climate change hotspot, specifically in regard to climate-induced risk to water, water infrastructure, water security. So climate externalities render Sri Lanka very, very, very vulnerable, with potential severe consequences for lives, livelihoods, especially in sectors like agriculture. So there is an urgent need for strategies to move from water risk and conflict to water cooperation and understanding. So the theme of today, water for peace, is very, very relevant in this context. But that is easier said than done because there are challenges to bring about this cooperation. Conflicts and disputes are often brought on by competing interests, as we saw, and not necessarily by too little water. It is competing interests. They are made worse by misrepresentations, miscommunication, entrenched thinking, hence the value of data and information. Multiple levels of decentralization, unclear demarcations of roles and responsibilities among water institutions exacerbate this situation. Lack of an integrated technological institutional framework to promote sustainable resource management hamper these efforts, as well as the influence of political and other vested interests. And here is where us as professionals, as intellectuals, this is where we face a tremendous challenge. This is a test of our credibility, our intellectual honesty, who should be giving bold and decisive leadership at all levels when confronted with political pressures and other vested interests. So barriers can be overcome, but we need sincerity of purpose and commitment of all stakeholders, governmental as well as non-governmental. Let's quickly brush through some of the strategies. I mean, some of these we have already talked about, but let's just refresh our memories as we close the presentation. So we need to look for what can be done, not what must be done. The needs, focus on needs rather than rights and positions. Emphasize inclusiveness rather than exclusiveness. Mutual respect rather than suspicion among water stakeholders. Recognize the key critical role of reliable data as the basis for sound management and decision making. We know that we cannot manage what we do not measure. And to do that, we need to make the relevant investments to make monitoring, data sharing, cross-border collaboration. To enable all that, we need to make the relevant investments. We also talked about the need to continue to have dialogue with stakeholders at all levels. Local populations who often have to bear the costs and impacts of water-related interventions are not always consulted about the use of what is after all their water. Community level participation is especially powerful if you can demonstrate how the outcomes are clearly and directly linked to improving the livelihoods and lives of people. And to do that, we have to identify effective entry points. Political, I would call them, not visible, political entry points and champions. So these are people who can look beyond their sectorial comfort zones, sectoral comfort zones, but also find solutions and find ways of implementing these solutions within the relevant sectors. It goes without saying that none of this is possible without developing the appropriate policies and institutions in river basins to make sure that benefits, there's upstream, downstream benefit sharing. And also remember that nothing is really fixed with the technological advances. Outlooks and perspectives change. As an example, if the costs of desalination reduce, the technologies improve, it may well become possible to do to irrigate using desalinated water. So then what happens? It almost turns this whole upstream downstream connection on its head, because suddenly coastal areas assume a huge strategic importance. They become the new upstream. So we need to be aware that technological changes, what we see today, may not be exactly what will transpire, a few years down the road. So which means, so imagine we need to be very strategic and outgoing in our thinking, because we are in a fast-moving, fast development environment, technological, socio-economic, and environment. As Dr. Laksiri said, water development is complex. There is scarcity and competition for both land and water, but there's also the imperative to improve the productivity of these resources. Development is, yes, necessary, but then how do we ensure that both the risks and the benefits are shared equally? If not, the end result would be more disputes and conflicts. So our challenge or our aim should be to move from this continuum of conflict to what I would call a cooperation continuum, where we avoid going from cooperation to disputes and then to violent conflict, and instead move from disputes and unilateral actions to coordination, collaboration, joint action, and integration. So focus on sensible development, what I would call a sensible development, which means, yes, we need to do careful investment. We have to meet basic needs, We have to meet urgent demands and we have to meet urgent demand and grow, which means we have to ensure increases in productivity, but also ensure increased sharing of benefits and ultimately building sustainability and resilience. So I hope this 45 minutes I spent was useful and will trigger some useful discussion in the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Himli, for that very lively discussion on the war and how it evolves into conflicts and then looking for strategies. I'm, for one, glad that Sri Lanka does not have shared resources or transboundary issues when it comes to our water bodies, because I'm pretty sure we'd be at the forefront of the water conflicts because we seem to be very good at conflicts rather than resolving. But however, that being said, I hope that the disparities that exist in the national level water issues are also solved through us, and we'll find solutions inevitably with time. We'll move on to the first discussion, which will be conducted by engineer Dr. Herat Mantritilaka. And before I invite him onto the podium, allow me to give a brief introduction to him. Dr. Mantritilaka is currently an emeritus scientist at the International Water Management Institute. He retired from the institute as a senior researcher. He has experience living and working in India, Central Asia, and Colombo, and served as the representative of IWMI in those countries since 2002. He's a graduate of the Patrice Lumumba Friendship University at Moscow and specializes in designing and constructing water infrastructure, particularly hydropower stations. He started his professional career in 1976 as a civil engineer at the Dambulu Oya Irrigation Project of the Mahaveli Development Board and continued later on its successor, the Mahaveli Authority of Sri Lanka, for over 25 years in different capacities. By the time of his departure from the authority in 2002, he managed two key divisions, the Planning and Monitoring Unit and the Environment Division of the MASL in the capacity of a director. While working for the authority, he managed a knowledge management corporate enterprise, the Natural Resource Management Services Private Limited, for the Mahaveli Authority, Sri Lanka. He was instrumental in organizing the Lanka Organic Agricultural Movement and the GIS Association of Sri Lanka and served both in the capacities of president and later the secretary. Both these organizations were pioneers in Sri Lanka in those fields. He also teaches water-related topics at the postgraduate courses of engineering faculties of Peradeniya, Ruhuna, and Rajarata universities. He led multidisciplinary and multicultural research teams in several countries, managed donor-funded projects, published many scientific papers on a variety of water-related topics, and made presentations, communications on different aspects of water resource management at national, regional, and international conferences. His PhD in 1983 was on stochastic hydrology and focused on modeling river flow as a Markov chain for management of multi-purpose reservoirs. Dr. Herat Mantritilaka, the floor is yours for your first presentation.
Thank you. It looks introduction was a little longer than my presentation. But can I jump onto the presentation, please? Sorry, that was my creation. So anyway, I won't talk much because Dr. Hilmi, my friend and colleague formerly, did a wide cover of the situation. Right, second one. The first one. Yeah, monthly. Yeah, go ahead. Not go on. Yeah. So say this monthly, of the monthly. So I won't go into bigger things, global things, but I will touch upon my personal experiences. Okay, presenters will be ready as well. Okay, no, no, shut down camera. No, I just, type monthly scale. Present nothing or things are done. Yeah, it was put in the hold. Evening. Percentage. Yeah, percentage will be there. Good. Slides for the year. Right. Now it seems we are ready. When engineer Janaki, another good friend of mine, talked to me about this, she asked me to talk about watershed management. How do you link with the watershed management? Well, you have to judge now what I said. Of course, scarcity is growing day by day. We all know that. That exposes people to conflict. It's not when you have more supplies to run into this. Because water is more important for your food, health, energy, very many things. You can't do without it. Therefore, water is grabbed or fought for it in any way people can. The situation is getting worse. You can see the green line, the demand is rising, supply is blue coming down, but it's a fluctuation. You see, we had a normal curve, finite, but it's elongating and peak is rising towards flattening. You see the scarcity is created, supply and the deficit. That is where the social conflict of we can't meet the demand. Basically because of the climate change. So when water is scarce, one way is the accessibility is lost. That could be through the pollution. That could be due to physical inaccessibility or not adequate supplies sometimes. But then the tension arises, as I mentioned in the previous slide. So communities run into conflicts. It's not only communities, even the countries. Now I'm coming into my personal experiences in India. I worked in Andhra Pradesh, in Krishna Basin. Krishna Basin links with 3 states, Indian states, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. Now there's another one. I can't remember the name, but they have separate Andhra Pradesh into divided into town. Telangana, that's right. Thank you. You see, the water is managed by the irrigation department of all 3 states. They won't share the data they won't share the water, though they're in the same basin. Same, he talked about the Kaveri Basin down south, draining into the Chennai or the Tamil Nadu. Here the same. I was there initiating Australian funded project on dialogue on water between the states. No one was sharing data with anybody. We walked into Maharashtra irrigation department. He said, because I was an engineer, I was accepted. My colleague was socialist, he was not taken in. So such a rigid, because they were talking about the NGOs coming into the picture and talking about water sharing issues. They have a central water commission in India. They couldn't get the data, so they have set up their own monitoring station. So their conflict was resolved by a water tribunal. A retired judge was appointed, and he had 3 months to listen to all the 3 estates and find out what to do. Well, fortunately, I was transferred out of that to Central Asia. Next one is Central Asian experience. This Central Asia is above Afghanistan. There are 4, 5 stans formerly belongs to Russia, Soviet Union. You can see Kyrgyzstan on this side, and this is Uzbekistan here. This is Kazakhstan. This is Tajikistan cutting in here. This is Turkmenistan. They're rich countries, but deserts, just like Middle East. A lot of oil and gas, even gold is there. But they were sharing 2 river basins, 2 rivers, Darya and Amu Darya, about 140 cubic kilometers of water draining into the Aral Sea somewhere here. Aral Sea dried. It was a global catastrophe. Here, your slave visiting the Aral Sea, the ships, huge ships were lying there on the sand. And people can't live there or nearby towns, which were flourishing sometimes back. And they had, they had this poison settled in the ocean bed, blowing now. People have cancer and all sort of health problems, and irrigation going to dogs. So this is again Siberia Basin closer. Aral Sea is somewhere here. And this basin, water is shared by this Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tashkent, and this area, Tajikistan. We were working in here, that's called Fergana Valley, very fertile area, a lot of agriculture. During the Soviet times, they built 100-kilometer canal, South Fergana Canal, within 100 days during the wartime. They wanted to grow cotton. Irrigation was rapid, right? So Siddharya River flow in there. There's a reservoir here on the upstream near the Jalalabad over here. And it's called Taktagul Reservoir. They were using that for hydropower generation in Kyrgyzstan. During the winter, they were discharging the river. But the rest of the area, down below, they were using water during the summertime for irrigation purposes. So they couldn't have the water because during the winter, there's no other energy, so they drained the reservoir. So there was a conflict. There was a committees, international committee set up like Mekong Basin Commission, but presidents get together, they won't agree on anything. Personal rivalries. So they were all communists. They were hardened by that, but brothers hugs together, drink together, but they won't agree on anything. So we dropped the main river basin work and worked on the minor basins, minor draining into this area, and there we could work something. But sometimes people trigger the extremists, the religious and nationalist extremists can trigger situation. They slit throats their colleagues who sat down previous month, had workshops, discussions, all that. When the conflict triggers, somebody can blow the pipes and they could go and kill each other. I have seen my colleagues be slit off. So that was the worst situation I have come across on water conflict. This map I took from the Chamber of Commerce of Canada. They were advising their businesses to how to invest. If you can see that belt here in the middle, that is where the climate change come to a final situation in 2047. The other areas on the beyond that, it will be somewhere around 2053. Climate change will come to the max. Within the belt, 2038. Attached document says in Sri Lanka, which I couldn't access recently. It was closed now from that Chamber of Commerce, says by 2030, Sri Lanka will have 3 or 4 cities with day zero reaching. You know what is day zero mean? That means there won't be a drop of water even for drinking. The Pretoria reached that level. California reached that level, reached back. Taipei reached that level. Somewhere else, which will reach to that level soon because of the El Nino effect ongoing now. And this heat may not take us there, but 2030 they are predicting. I'm not convinced, or I hope I won't be there by that time, but we need to start working on that. Those cities who reach that day zero, sometimes back, work 5-6 years beforehand, adjusting the systems, getting the people to cope with it, and giving all sort of arrangements to meet those days. So we are not far away, so we need to do that. So how do we overcome? This slide's coming from my colleague's work. If the water scarcity looms, either we can store water. If not, we can store that water as food in food storages, or we can make management strategies. This is what I talked to you, that how the day zero is being reached and averted those countries. So if you go by the water infrastructure, the reservoirs, and we all know we were designing those infrastructure using the last 30 years of hydrology. We never built the climate change situation into that. If you go back and look at the hydrology of those last 30 years, maybe now 20 years, whether we are capturing those in the statistics, I'm not sure, but we are vulnerable, very vulnerable to that. That's why I put this slide on. So if you look at water storages, so we can have reservoirs, we have tanks, small tanks, all sort of thing. We have 5 or 6 aquifers. We need to recharge them. We need to make them ready, available. We can store water underground in the soil. That's an option. We can use wetlands, forest, swamps, and whatever we have to recharge and keep that water stored. If you go back to the reservoirs, reservoir rule curves, operational curves were designed with the last 30 years hydrology. I know from the Mahavalley Water Management Secretariat, where when I worked there, we developed those rule curves for all the reservoirs using resources in early 80s, using the hydrology of those years. Now the situation has changed. We get the flash floods, so engineering has to be changed. That's where the Water Forum, IESL has to work on giving guidelines, training, giving guidance to the government and all that on this looming disaster. Anyway, let's move further. Now I am focusing on the world wars in Sri Lanka. We know in the rural areas, access to water for drinking purposes, always a conflict. We go to any village, there is issue. We know tail end issues. Most of the irrigation engineers come across. That's a big issue. But we have worked out some of the technologies. And I'm pleased to see one of the system worked out in system H. Authors are here, bulk water allocation. We practiced for a couple of years and forgot. Instead of spreading it around, we have forgotten. There the tail end issue was solved. And people visualize the water as a volume allocated for them. The allocation word was not used, but the share was given to them. We forgot that. Cut schemes with the climate change run into very serious problems. We haven't talked about them. Then we come into sectoral conflicts. We had issues, we have extreme elements mobilizing people against projects. Rajangana, water supply scheme, we had a project. Samutragama, we had an issue. Right around, even Western province, there are issues. Right? So these are not backed by the institution, but these are wars. They are cold wars. And that Cold War looms between the hydropower and irrigation in the Mahaveli. Diversion from Polgolla is an issue because if you send the water 1 cubic meter down from the Nigala Victoria, you can generate more than sending through the Ukwela and Botan. There's an issue that money comes in. Electricity board system control stops water not on cubic meters, megawatts stored in the reservoirs. So remember how they work. Drinking water issues. We have Kalani issue, flood and water releases in Haluganga issues, Nilwala issues. You can think about many issues like Min area and Moragakanda issues, elephant running out. All that has led to something called water policy. And that water policy, we can't get out of that 2020 water policy, which was sponsored by the ADB. We're still thinking mechanisms and statements from that. Look at what we are talking in the world. Water scarcity is coming, so water quantity has to be looked at, watershed has to be looked after, reservoir has to be managed differently. None of those picked up in the water policy, which have been approved by the government now. Water quality issues rampant. We don't have that much issue as Thailand or Indonesia or India, to that matter, but still, we know our water quality is poor. We are not addressing water use competition. Water use can be arranged differently by allocation, demand management, when we can improve that. We are not looking at this. We have water extremes. Nobody's talking about it's disaster management authority opposite or departmental ministry agency. They don't have development plans. That's what I'm going to talk into the Friday's class. Anyway, those are cold wars, ongoing conflicts in the country. Now I come to the topic Janaki wanted to talk to. Mahaveli, my favorite area. I was born, bred, and trained. I learned my skills in this area. So the downstream, you can see this map coming from Mahaveli Third Corporate Plan. All this downstream depends on the catchment area which we are talking about. Previously, before 2000, we worked on this upper catchment, UMC or upper Mahaveli catchment area in the Mahaveli Environment Division in Polgolla. We developed GIS, land use maps were done, sedimentation, transport monitored, all that was done. But after 20 years, now we are Mahaveli Authority again starting a new project on watershed. All that was closed, like bulk water allocation. We are starting from the scratch, right? At that time, we developed this map. There you can see about 30% land already degraded. Soil cannot store water there. So largest reservoir has been lost. We need to rebuild it. So all what we are trying to do is modify the hydrogram. You can see urban areas completely sealed off. So water runs very quickly, splash, goes up. Peri-urban areas somewhat halfway through, but urban areas more close to. What we need to do is raise the base flow, cut down the peak. Can we do it? Yes, to a certain extent by modifying the land use. That's the only thing we can do. And you can see the size of the drainage area, we can reduce, look into that. With steepness, we can't change it. Soil type, we can't change it. Only thing we can change vegetation. Vegetation means how the land is being used. Maybe urban areas, maybe forest, maybe tree, maybe other sloping agriculture. So we can do a lot of things there, still remaining, but engineers are not involved, unfortunately. But by the way, my previous experience on watershed management, engineers are biggest culprits. You see, when the roads slide by the side of the road, landslide, what we do, we pick up that soil and dump on the downs, on the sloping side, right? Trucks and trucks of. We blame farmers for 50 meter cube of metric tons of soil loss per year, whereas 2 dump trucks will do much bigger damage. All that will come ready-made on the stream, come to the reservoir. Your reservoir gets silted. That's why I'm saying engineers are to be blamed for that. So it's not farmers. And we get from those studies, we knew which soil comes from the catchment, which is coming from the stream. We can identify them separately by monitoring sedimentation. Anyway, let me go further, right? How can we manage this? By engaging local people. Because they are living there, they are the people who can handle pollution, be siltation, erosion. Local people only can. So what we can do is steward them. Stewardship is very important. We need to do that. Can we do that? Are we doing that? That's an issue. We need to understand under which they are saying they need to understand for other local people what is their implication on the water availability in the catchment. Not only catchment, even downstream. In downstream, people have to go back and help them on that. There's a UNEP suggestion and user pays. That means if you want water more from the catchment, downstream users have to go and pay that environmental fees, right? Keeping that land, but it doesn't work. They try in several countries and developing countries particularly, it doesn't work because even downstream people don't have enough money to pay for that. Engaging local communities on all water sector. Water is flatly owned and managed by the local people. What we do is technical guidance. So we need to get them involved, set them targets. Without guiding them towards certain targets, there's no stewardship. So how to set the targets to the communities? They should understand the issues, what they're doing, what are the implications. They must be guided to informed actions. They should do things with knowledge, why they're doing it and how they do it, without disturbing their livelihoods and other things. And we need to help to do that things meaningfully. Just don't say do the soil conservation, it won't happen. Just don't say, don't run into conflict. Look at the downstream people, share the water, it won't happen. As individuals, as people, and more moving towards money, not sharing partnerships, we are more becoming individualistic. So me and I is the biggest thing nowadays. So setting targets, I have three things. Align with the priorities and challenges. If it is flood, if it is reservoir sedimentation, focus on that. Identify locations from where it comes. That's why I said our identification was trucks, dumping trucks, dump more soil, which you're talking about the sedimentation or reservoir. And the supporting the community. My experience in the Victoria catchment. We moved people, we declared, the government declared VRR sanctuary, Victoria Ranthambore sanctuary. And later on, they declared a small area as a core where people can live and work. Some of the people were shifted because of the Victoria Reservoir towards the system C and B. They went there, the children came back, or the parents came back, leaving the children there. And they have the land. We haven't taken over the land. Though we have taken, they knew these were my lands. Now they are renting those lands to individuals who are farming. And now they are cleaning and farming. If you go in the January, you can see up to the Victoria brim, they clean and grow vegetables. This season, they were growing tomatoes. They're very happy. Good yield. And I know some of the villagers gone to Kataragama last weekend. So when you talk to them, they say, this is not my land. Land belongs to him. When I talk to him, why don't you do something? Soil conservation, he said, Mahatya, ඔයිට මද්ද මෙයාට දුන්නට ඊළඟ දවසේ හෙට ඔක්කොම හම්බෙන්නේ කුලිය මට ඕකට තබා මේ මට ජීවත් වෙන්න ඕනේ. So where do we stand? So we need to think, we as intelligent people, educated from the country, we need, from this nation, we need to think how to solve these issues. Anyway, setting targets. We can't talk about the sedimentation of reservoirs and lack of hydropower generation capacity, so irrigation downstream to the upcountry people, the catchment people. So we need to contextualize on which surroundings they live. So this is where my example from Victoria sites talks that livelihood matters. So we have to focus on their livelihood in order to get soil conservation, soil and water conservation done. Without that, without taking the pressure from the land, giving them new jobs, new income streams, you won't be able to do that. That's one of the issues. Otherwise, we will run into Gujarat like this, or we will go to Africa like this, and migrate whole bunch to some other country as we do now. This slide leave you a bit hilarious, and it was shared by me, shared with me somebody, a friend of mine. I thought it's relevant today. So supplying water is very important to whatever the thing to meet the. This is where the watershed management comes into the picture. Thank you very much.
Sorry to now tell you now, we are around half an hour because we'll have to switch off these this online platform at 6:45. So there will be another meeting at 7 o'clock. So I'm pleading and requesting the next two discussions to short your presentations. Thank you.
So we'll quickly move on to the next discussant, and I'll give a brief introduction to him. He's engineer BASS Pereira. He's appointed as chairman of the board from 2003. He functions concurrently as the chairman of the Central Engineering Services Private Limited and construction subsidiary of CCB. Engineer BAS Sunil Pereira is an academically and professionally recognized Sri Lanka recognized in Sri Lanka Engineering Services special grade professional with nearly 40 years illustrious career in providing leadership to the development of nationally important multi-purpose water resource projects, irrigation networks, and associated infrastructure in Sri Lanka, contributing to national agriculture and to power generation, both solar and hydropower. He started his career as a design engineer with the irrigation department and has risen through the hierarchy up to project director at Dadaruwa Multipurpose Development Project, director of irrigation of Kurunegala, director major constructions, and then moving on as the additional secretary to the Ministry of Housing and Construction in 2018. He acted as the chairman of State Engineering Corporation and Director General of Mahavadi Authority of Sri Lanka, and has also provided his expertise as a consultant to the CECB, CAMC International, and to several key steering committees appointed by the government. A strategic leader in teaming and directing subject matter specialists, stakeholders in multi-phase construction endeavors, and to innovate in managing risk and realizing development objectives and goals. Ladies and gentlemen, our third presenter for the day, Engineer B.A.S.S. Pereira.
Good evening, everyone. Actually, I am not going to do a presentation. So I was requested to do this one as quickly as possible. So I will take little time. I think Dr. Sally has mentioned, gave very informative and impressive presentation with regard to water crisis and water crisis. Something like that. And at the same time, Dr. Mantilaka also gave a nice presentation with regard to this, this topic. I will elaborate some points mentioned by Dr. Sally as well as with, Dr. Mantilaka. As we all know, with the development of the country, with the development of industry in the country, there's a competitive demand for the water sector that is sometimes beyond our control. As mentioned, due to this competitive demand, various conflicts and other issues are surfacing. So we have to face that conflicts. So that is the main topic ahead of us right now. I will try to address this issue, especially confined to Sri Lankan context, because now Sri Lanka is facing severe economic pressures as well as issues regarding agriculture sector. So I will basically confine to my talk to Sri Lankan context. If you take Sri Lanka, definitely beyond any doubt, it's a water rich or the irrigated, in terms of irrigation, it's a rich country. The reason why I am mentioning that is Sri Lanka has over 500 medium and major reservoirs, both in irrigation and Mahavali. And at the same time, we have over 30,000 minor tanks in this country, scattered all across Sri Lanka. So at the same time, if you think about the other countries, they do have conflicts, weaponry conflicts, and other deadliest conflict with regard to water. But fortunately, because of our great hydraulic civilization, we are still managing well with regard to irrigation or the water sector. So, so the problem ahead of us can be solved if we take 2-3 strategical approaches to solve this problem. So what we can do is basically when planning our irrigation schemes. Actually, I was involved with, at that time, DJ was Madam Kamala Dasa. So we planned all the sectors required at that time. If you take this drinking water, we already planned to give them some amount of water. We discussed with them and we allocated that amount from the beginning. So in Dadru project, we planned to give drinking water, hydropower and fishing community, and those who requested, we gave some allocation of water. So if we think about planning for the future projects, definitely we can manage that conflict before doing the work. So that is, I think, one way and the best way to handle this nature of issues. Now, if you talk about this Ginnilwala and Malwatoya, Kumbukkannoya, in all those projects, we have clearly identified some amount of water for the other stakeholders as well. So this is in planning stage, we can do for the future projects. So we can solve that problem before making some conflicts or before making other issues with the communities, especially stakeholders who uses different water for different kind of their requirements. And if you take another example, I will cite one example from Mahaveli also. The Polgolla diversion was the first one that done under the Mahaveli project. At that time also, this Bovatana to Kalaoya, some allocation was established, water allocation. At the same time, the other competitive user with regard to this water is drinking water. So drinking water point also established near to Katugastata. At the same time, power component also established. So I think some or other we have earlier project and this current project we have managed to do with the different stakeholders. So because of that reason, we don't have much issues at this moment, except in few places like Rajangana, Mahakanadara and some other places. So as Dr. Sally mentioned, there are some issues. I am not going to tell that 100% is okay, but there are some issues. The one common thing with regard to this issue, one common thing is we should not think about water right, that should come on need-based assessments, something like that. Need-based assessment we should think. And at the same time, the critical thing, whatever the policies we take, sometimes it's not useful unless otherwise we prepare the mindset of our farmers, because now farmers think it is their right. So until we clear that mindset, or until we revolutionize the mindset of the farmers are the dominant people of this scenario. So we should take some steps to change their mindset. That is very important in my point of view. So we should do something to improve that part. Otherwise, we can't. We are not in a position to settle this dispute or settle this conflict. So that is very important. And another important area I would like to mention, we use about 5,000 meter cube of water in Mahaveli area. At the same time, about 6,000 meter cube of water in irrigation department, in order to cultivate about 800 lakhs of acres, both in Yala and Maha. So the previous water usage was somewhat higher. Now it has come down about 20% or something like that. So we should inform them to cut down their water usage regularly. And there should be a scientific interventions also. Day before yesterday, I talked with one soil scientist of the irrigation department. So they are thinking about these previous examples, wet and dry system. So if we practice that, especially during yellow season, we can save about 10 to 15 percentage of water. So we should develop such mechanism with the innovation of agriculture technology to use new agricultural system and the water management system to improve the water efficiency. Thereby, we can take some water to other stakeholders, particularly for the drinking water and other domestic water requirement. The other point is, at this moment, we have large number of wide range of projects that are being implemented by the irrigation department and Mahavali authority, funded by either ADB or World Bank. So there should be a design criteria in order to minimize this water, this water efficiency or the minimize water wastage. So such practices I have not seen so far. So we should think about that way also to introduce some real mechanism to improve the water efficiency in the canal system. So that is also mandatory requirement. Then only we can think about save some water to give the other stakeholders. The other point I would like to tell is, if possible, I think Press MP project, CRIP project, previously one reservoir was planned to do. I think Mr. Alakanda was the project director, and VOA, some other project. So for the domestic water requirement or drinking water requirement, we should think about some special reservoirs so that they can cater higher and higher demand of drinking water. That is also one way of resolve this conflict, in my opinion. We mentioned about this Mahavali project also. That's also a very important thing that we should talk at this moment. After being implementation of the Mahavali project, still we have not harnessed the entire potentiality of the this master plan, even after 50 years time. So the main concern is that the construction of tunnel from Moragahakanda to Yakal has not been completed due to this. Previously we had issues with the tunnel. So at that time, the Honorable President want to delay that tunnel until we finalize some mistakes in the Umawaya tunnel. Now, however, that has been finalized. So now this NCP canal, it's moving on. So it will take water up to Yakal. That means entire Anuradhapura area will be fed after completion of that one. Hopefully about 3-4 years time, we will be able to complete that one. Once it is established, there are some other improvements to be done to take water to Iranamadu or the Kilinochchi area, because after Yakal, that means after Anuradhapura, more water is required. At this moment, out of 15,000 MCM of water, we are using 500 MCM water. That means nearly 1/3 of water is being used at this moment by the Mahavali River. So there is a potential. If we think and if we plan well, we can move forward up to Iranamadu, provided that all the money and the funds availability and the water resource availability is established. At the same time, there is a big component of the Mahavali area is still not completed. That is Madhuravaya right bank. because if we take Madurai alone, it is about 560 MCM. If you combine all the major reservoirs in Putla's Polonnaru area, that is Paraktam Samudraya, Giritale, Minneria, Kaudulla, Kantale, that's total volume is somewhere around 350, whereas Madurai is about 590, nearly double that amount. So reservoir has been constructed, and there is a potential to increase that reservoir capacity by improving the spill level about 2 meter, very small amount of money we can do that. So that area nearly 40,000 hectares has been not touched by the Madurai right bank side. So 2 years back we started that one. Once it is established, about 40,000 farmers, so some farmers can be settled. So we can use the existing water for the betterment of our country and betterment of the agricultural system, and produce more productions, more value-added crops and all that. And the other important thing, the most important thing I would like to stress here, we completed a lot of projects across the country, irrigation and both the Mahavali system. But if you look at the these farmers who are the persons deal with the ploughing and everything, they are doing a lot of labor, and if you look at them, their livelihood. About 3-4 months back, I studied that one. They are not in a proper livelihood level. So that is a problem with regard to both the Mahavali and irrigation systems. We see that some productions are there. We see that Mahavali gives from Victoria, Randanigala, Kotmale, we gives hydropower to the country about 80 billion. The value of power is 80 billion. At the same time, we give 10 metric tons, 10 billion metric tons of rice to the country. That is about 20% of the total production of the rice in this country. But on the other hand, if you look at the farmers, they are in poverty level, some of them. So we have to think some solution. Otherwise, in this water sector, in this projects level, the conflicts come in some other way. There are poverty and all that, because in Valikand area, I observed most of the second and third generation, this young crowd are moving away from that area to work in Colombo. That is to do some kuli works, kuli වැඩ කරන්න ඒ කට්ටිය එනවා කොළඹට. So that is the situation. So we were trying to find out a solution for that one. We discussed with the farmers some time back, and what they need is, in addition to their paddy cultivation, they need some other cultivation with high efficiency water usage. So we inform them to do some smart agricultural system. You are well aware of that. You believe me, this one. So we gave about quarter acre of this smart agriculture and polytunnel. Their earning was about 300,000 rupees per one season by cultivating chilies. So you see, the 30 years they were trying to do something, and finally, according to their requirement and the intervention of smart agricultural system, we were able to do some cultivation using very small quantity of water. So initially we practiced with young people, but I went to see there about 2 months back to this Kalagawa area. Now young ladies are doing that one under small plot of land, small meshes there, and mulch කියලා polythene එකක් දානවා. It is a climate resilience. So if you get more water, it will resilient to that one. If it is in a dry season also, that embedded, the percolated water cannot be evaporated, so that crop is well established. So on the other hand, on this polytunnel, on this polytunnel, it's a scientific invention. Throughout the day, they will give ultraviolet this radiation so that they can produce carbohydrate about 6 to 8 hours time, whereas in normal one, it will produce about 4 hours something. So their production were also very high. So we have to think out of the box in this scenario in order to find out good solution in this water sector. So I think this conflict, another method of this conflict resolution would be to give them agricultural technology as much as possible, because we have all the other requirements. We have land and water. So only thing is to embed with this one, the agriculture practice. So that is also one way of keep happy the people, keep motivated the people, so on and so forth. And with regard to water resource professional, what is our duty ahead of us in order to solve these problems and find out a rational solution? I think we should all aware of this situation and try to apply this agricultural and scientific inventions to solve this problem. The best way is to efficient usage of water and the practices that come out with the agriculture department, because one minister informed me about two months back, there are rice varieties which is cultivated in Thailand that is about I think 7 months. The cultivation period is 7 months, whereas it gives 14 metric tons per hectare. So he wanted to see how compatible to this area, and in Mahavali area we can do that as a research, or the Bathalagod we can think about that one. So we have to think about innovations, if we can think about such innovation, because now with the global innovation trends, we can find out some solution that is really a requirement to this country. If you so lot of global issues are there. Now what we should focus is, I strongly tell that what we should focus is our country's issues, which we can solve in a very competitive advantage manner, and we can solve if all professionals, you and me, get together and do this one. Okay, thank you very much. That's my comment.
Thank you, Engineer Pereira, for shedding a light and bringing to our attention those very specific problems that we have ongoing, and for those proposals. We can talk more about the different innovative solutions in the Q&A session. And moving on to the final discussant of the day, Engineer Dr. Misaka Hetiarachi. He'll be joining us over Zoom. Engineer Dr. Hetiarachi is a civil engineer, an environmental engineer by training, and holds a PhD in environmental planning and policy from the University of Queensland. He is currently a senior fellow at the World Wildlife Fund, USA, leading its flood green guide training programs and its sustainable construction and building materials initiative. He also works as an adjunct associate professor at James Cook University, Australia, and a visiting scholar at the Northwestern University, Chicago, USA. And previously, he was a lecturer attached to the University of Morato as well. He's a co-author of several global guidelines on water, environment, and sustainable construction published by the WWF, UNEP, and the Ramsar Convention. He has also worked as an environmental advisor for the UN Emergency Shelter Cluster in Haiti and the Philippines, and led green reconstruction training in Nepal following the 2015 earthquake. Engineer Dr. Misaka Herachi, the floor is yours. Are you here with us? Can you hear us?
Yes, Rajini, thank you very much. Can I share the screen? I can now, right?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks again. Also, a very big thanks to, I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, please continue.
Yeah. And a very big thanks to Dr. Sali, Dr. Mantha Tilaka, and engineer Sunil Perera for those very insightful and comprehensive presentations. I have almost run out of things to say in my presentation because they very comprehensively covered all the salient points of this topic. But as we have discussed broadly about the role of water and water management in building peace and stability, and also how water can trigger conflicts as well. In my contribution, I will focus on a particular aspect of water, namely water-related disasters. So, water-related disasters can include catastrophic events driven by natural, hydrological, and meteorological hazards, so which would include things like floods and landslides or even cyclones for that matter. But they also include disasters triggered by man-made hazards such as dam breach and so on. So if I directly go into the slide, the photo in the left-hand side is one good example of how disasters, natural hazard-driven disasters, can lead to conflict. It's a photo from a village in Banke district in Nepal, and it's from the 2000 very devastating floods which happened in 2014. I was involved in that in the aftermath in reconstruction efforts, led some of the projects led by the World Wildlife Fund. Now, this particular village was special because there were claims that the flooding in that area was actually exacerbated by a downstream dam in India, which is in Bihar in India, which is called Lakshmanpur Dam, because it disrupted the natural flow of water in the river, which is, I think the name of the river was Rapti, which is part of the Gandaki Basin in Nepal. And so that blocked the natural flow of water and backed up water, causing floods, especially when it comes to rapid flooding in the Himalayas, especially when the monsoon and the snow melt collides. So the dam acted as a barrier and backing up water, which created devastating floods in that area. Now that led to that has created tension over the time between the two countries. It has now become like a geopolitical problem between the two countries. So disasters leading to conflict. The other one is more recent. If some of you may even recognize the photograph, it's from the floods that happened last year in Derna in Libya. Now that was here the tables switched. A conflict led to a disaster. The main reason for the floods to be this devastating in Derna was two upstream dams breaching due to the flood event, to the storm event. But their breach was not only due to the magnitude of the storm event, but also due to the terrible state of disrepair that the two dams were in, mainly due to the decade-long civil war that's going on in Libya. So now, there the water was, as Dr. Sali pointed out, it's now water becomes a victim here of conflicts. And these two examples also show how the engineering structures that we built as engineers can come very easily come to the epicenter of disasters and floods. If I move on, it's now very well established that water-related disasters, which are hydrological and meteorologically driven disasters or hazards, disasters driven by hydrological and meteorological hazards, comprise or constitutes the largest great majority of disasters in the world, right? Disasters driven by natural hazards, the disasters caused by hydrological and meteorological hazards they constitute the great majority. But if we look closely, these natural hazards do not necessarily translate automatically into disasters themselves. It's way more complicated than that. Often it is these socially created vulnerabilities which transform these disasters transform these hazards into disasters. So one example closer to us, which we can more relate to more closely. This is a photograph from the 2016 Kalani floods. This was taken in Sedawatta, some low income area in Sedawatta, which is just very close to Meethotamulla garbage dump, which collapsed the year after. Now, it's very clear, like it's the living conditions even before the floods in this area had been very appalling. They were the population were most of them were war migrants, like people who migrated from mainly the eastern province due to the war. Very low income and economic conditions. Because of the flood, in addition to getting inundated by water, this got inundated by garbage from the Meethotamulla dump as well. So you can see how they are clearing the land, as clearing the garbage after the water receded. But there was another issue here. If you can see, like below that line, you can see there's clearly a dark mark, right? Like a dark coloring. There's some staining on the walls. This was due to a crude oil leak which happened due to a burst of a oil pipe from the port to the oil tanks in Colonau. So the pipe burst and they got inundated not only by water but crude oil as well. And to add insult to injury, they now after the water receded, most of these houses were actually wooden houses, and they were soaked in crude oil. So right after the flood, there was a huge fire hazard. They were sitting on a ticking bomb, right? So this is how much these hazards or disasters created by natural hazards can lead into extremely unjust situations and leading to resentment and conflict. Not only these disasters, but also some of the solutions that we try to impose top down, sometimes just being narrow-minded through our technical understanding, technical knowledge, and quote unquote scientific projections. These certain solutions that we impose also can create bigger disasters and lead to conflict. This photo is from in the aftermath, taken in the aftermath of Cyclone Haiyan in the Filipino city of Tacloban. I was again involved there through as an environmental field advisor after Cyclone Haiyan. Now, this area was devastated. As you can see, it's all matchsticks. Took a direct hit from a storm surge. Hundreds died in this particular location. And then, in an effort to reduce the risk, a decision was taken of reduce the risk from future cyclones and storm surges. A decision was taken to relocate this community entirely from the area. And this is again, like the previous community in Sri Lanka, they were poorest of the poor, living under extremely dire conditions. Some of them were relocated to areas which are 19 kilometers away from the original location. So most of them lost their livelihoods. Some of them were fishermen, some of them were doing work in the city, and so on. So it was a disaster upon a disaster, which was created by the solution that the governments and partly the government gave and partly contributed by professionals like us. So there's an underlying thread in all these examples. It's inequality, right? Inequality aggravates disasters, and it also fuels conflict as well. So in this day that we are talking about water for peace, I think we have to, especially as engineers who are often who sit on decision-making positions at different levels, keeping inequality at forefront, because it's something that we can easily miss. Okay, moving forward, there is climate change. As Dr. Sali pointed out, it's a very useful culprit. Like anything can be blamed on climate change, but it is also a fact. I mean, just going very quickly because we have touched this topic. It is the last year, the year which the last IPCC report on climate change was also released. Some of the university studies done revealed that it's likely that a 1.5 centigrade warming can happen in the next decade. And also, as Dr. Mantatilaka showed from a very informative diagram, 2 centigrade warming may be reached by 2024, 2065. So it's a very alarming condition. With this, water-related disasters would further intensify and aggravate. It's understood as the second most serious risk posed to communities after wars and conflicts, right? And finally, the vulnerable communities who least contribute to climate change will be the most disproportionately affected, and again, causing displacement, dispossession, and so on. So inequality become a central point here. So because of this, in climate change policy now, it is identified that addressing this issue of equity and justice is central, and by our solutions, we should not create, even if it is for climate change, by our solutions, we should not create further injustice and further deprive these communities which are already suffering. Now, we all know the water sector has been moving towards more integrated, more inclusive, and environmentally sensitive policy, like being more environmentally sensitive, integrated, and inclusive policy has been advocated. I'm not saying that they are necessarily adopted, but advocated in the water sector. The same trends are taking place in the disaster management sector as well. It's globally shifting towards integration, advocating towards integration. Some concepts have come up, what you can see here. I mean, of course, we all know about integrated water resources management, but things like integrated disaster risk management, ecosystem-based adaptation, and also one of the newest concepts is nature-based or nature-positive engineering, nature-positive solutions. So there definitely is a understanding that more inclusive, more integrated, and more nature-positive solutions are required. But in this forum, I would like to narrow it down and ask the question, so what's our role as engineers in combating this inequality and conflict, especially with regard to the subtopic I'm talking about in disaster management? So the simple short answer is trying to balance with trying to include these three: integrated, inclusive, and nature positive character in all our planning and design endeavors. Some examples were discussed by the other speakers. So what we mean by integrated is understanding it, like our issues, regardless of the scale of the project, nature of the project, and so on. Understanding it within a system, understanding the system-wide issues, interrelationships, understanding the stakeholders, but not only that, understanding the ecosystems where our projects sit. And making it not only understanding it, making it inclusive, understanding the inequality and power asymmetries, not only between bigger states, nation states, and smaller nation states, but also between the communities and stakeholders, because they do not hold equal level of power in a decision situation. Engaging the stakeholders, and the equation should be less power a particular stakeholder has, more engagement opportunities they should get. Finally, making it nature positive. So I just didn't like sneak this nature positive part into this triangle just because I'm an environmental engineer. It's been proven that more nature positive solutions, more the projects, more the designs and planning are nature positive, it leads to less conflicts, right? Because it creates more nature positive solutions, create more ecosystem benefits, they create livelihood benefits. Nature positive is more equal, like they create conditions for equality. And when there is less environmental impacts, there's less room for conflicts. Now, as some of the previous speakers pointed out, the bigger conceptual formulations like this are much easier said and done. So I would like to conclude with few thoughts for Sri Lanka, more than policy, more than for policy, and how we can actually target change of practice and training in the engineering sector, which can engender more equality and justice and less conflict in our water-related practices. So there are nominal provisions for community consultation and environmental impact assessment, social impact processes, assessment processes in Sri Lanka, very much in the regulations, but that obviously is not enough. It's a long road ahead for real participatory planning and inclusive design. I think that is extremely important like how to start participatory planning and inclusive design, how to bring them to our real decision making, specific decision making into our trainings, training the engineers, training the technical sector, as well as like undergraduate training and so on. Challenges are even higher for nature positive planning. So as I said, if we, the other speakers discussed a lot about what can be done on broad policy level, at a broad policy level, but if we can look at more sort of specific practices, engineering practices, norms and standards as well, how can inclusivity, integratedness be, and measures for equality can be and kind of injected into those, I think it will also help. So there are ample resources available for this globally. So making use of them, probably we can look at increasing the training for professional training for engineers like CPDs, which are looking at social aspects of engineering, increasing training opportunities for nature positive engineering, and also, as I said, transform the next generation by changing university and technical curriculum towards those things. Finally, as I said, there are so many global resources available globally. I'm not saying the picture is rosy anywhere in the world. Like here in Australia, also there are many, many challenges to making engineering decisions, governmental decisions more equitable. But in the least, we have some guidelines. So making use of them and integrating into our teaching and learning and training would allow us to somehow traverse this seemingly intractable problem, which is water sector is constantly triggering conflicts and inequality around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Misaka, for that very integrated presentation, bringing a perfect close to tying in all the presentations together. And we'll quickly move on to the Q&A session since we have very limited time and the Zoom will be closed at 6:45. I'd like to hand the session to Dr. Frank.
Thank you. I was planning to summarize the presentations, but I don't do it now because we have only 5 minutes. We have to do the justice for the members who are joining on the Zoom platform. At least we need to give them 5 minutes to ask a question and answer questions from there. So I'm commencing. We can have this question and answer session now quickly, because I'm requesting the members who are joining. There are 42 members joining from the Zoom. We'll give the priority to them. Otherwise, it will be put off at 6:45. I would like to invite Engineer Sunil Perra and Dr. Mantri Tilaka to come. No questions in the chat box. So we can request the audience to ask questions. Is it? One, right. What is that? There is a question. I will read out the question. Water could be used as a tool to motivate farmers to diversify their farms to high value crops. For example, the bulk water allocation strategy mentioned by Dr. Mantri was a strategy which was used in System H and a project called Mahali Restructuring and Rehabilitation Project implemented in 2000 under World Bank funding to motivate farmers. Under BWA approach, water can be made available over the farm gate on demand basis, similar other water projects developed for drinking water. That approach was further sophisticated using modern IT techniques so that farmers could order water from the main reservoir according to their individual crop water demands by sending a SMS. As a result of this BW approach, water duty also drops down to 0.85 meters from 1.2 meters, while increasing farm income by 36% because the farmers got motivated to grow high value crops. Now we have Engineer Bandula Gunaratna, who was the inventor of bulk water allocation. I will give you opportunity, Engineer Bandula, to comment on this.
So I have little time, but please read my book. It's not me. We introduced barcode allocation system. We said, all these people. So please read my book. I can give anybody a free copy. That's all I can tell at this moment. It is very successful. Please try, especially irrigation people, Mahal people. You can try it. It was very successful, but everybody has forgotten. People think about only concrete and soil. Nobody thinks about water. But we work with people. They participate. We call it participated bulk water allocated concept. It's not just bulk water. So all the farmers prepare their agriculture plan, calculate their own water requirements. They requested their water volume at the project management committee. Project management committee approved it. Then we encourage them to for water conservation. They actually practice it. So there are a lot of things. Please read my book. Thank you very much. If you need the book, please send me an email or friend.
Thank you. I have the book. Bandula gave it to me, and I was one of the trainers at that time, hired by Resources Development Company. So we were teaching. Yes. Yes. Is there any question? Right. Any more questions from the audience?
Can I come in?
Yeah.
So I'm Jadis, and this question is for Dr. Hilmi. You spoke about the Kaveri River issue between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Because those are closer states to our country, I'm a little bit interested on the actual underlying issue, not the underlying issue, underlying reason for the conflict. Can you elaborate a little more?
To be quite frank, I'm not fully aware of the details of that particular thing. I don't know if the Mantri is probably a bit more clued up on that particular issue actually. Kaveri, yes.
Yes, I didn't work on the Kaveri. I worked on the Andhra Pradesh Krishna basin, but the Kaveri issues we studied. What we found is people on the upstream built storages and using for irrigation and developing a low was there and supplying our urban water and not releasing water downstream to the Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu for irrigation and other livelihood work. So very little water came into Tamil Nadu, and people are putting pumps on the bank of the river. The electricity was free of charge, pumping water, doing paddy and sugar cane and banana growing, water, high water consuming crops. And there was no water flowing out to the sea. It's closed river, what we call in scientific term, closed river. So there's no water flowing out to the sea. So that was a conflict because there wasn't sufficient water coming to Tamil Nadu. Hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Yes, another comment here. Saiz Kumar, thanks for the presenters. Actually, this is not a question. My comments on current situation of Sri Lanka. That implementation of IWRM is very important, and there are several activities to pollute the water. It should be controlled. The existing law and regulations to be strengthened, and if possible to be introduced polluter tax. Further need more awareness on climate change. That's a good suggestion, because now electricity board is doing the same thing. Now they are adding day by day extra tax fee delay. Now we are moving quickly to pay our bill on time. Yeah, Dr. Laksiri? Yes,
Hi.
please.
No, actually, this is comment based on the Dr. Salih's presentation. Sorry, one thing, I could not follow the whole thing after the introduction. I had to attend another committee meeting of ISL. Just a comment, and if he wishes, he can answer also. Now, this Upper Alahara water project, I can't remember the full name, that big project currently going on. There, in his presentation, I saw 70% of water by gravity and 30% by pumping. Do you think it's going to be a viable solution in this country? Well, in my opinion, this is going to be another white elephant. So, any comment on this project?
It's a Upper Alhara Canal project that starts from Moragahakanda, runs up to Yakal. That is part of the project is concrete line section and conduits, and the balance portion is from a tunnel. So the pumping one is related to from I think Janaranjana to some other
Yeah.
place. I
Yeah.
think that comes as a phase 2 according to my. It's a phase 2 because the first portion will be from Moragahakanda to Yakal. Other one is still it's studying. It's not finalized, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So for that purpose, it's required to give more power. Actually, that's still in a question form. It's still not finalized that one. That is to
No, right.
pump water near Janaranjana to Kantale, sugar area by lifting about 50 meters or something like. It's still that is under feasibility stage. But anyway, the water can be given once this tunnel is completed. I think this is former PD is also there. If this tunnel is completed, the majority of our master plan area can be irrigated. That's Mahakanadarava, Urulueva, and about 300 minor tanks in Anuradhapur area. I think former PD and former secretary is also there. He can mention more points about that.
My question was, yeah, basically pumping water for irrigation in this country, I don't think that's a viable solution. That's what I see. And also we have not done a proper study, though we have planned this project. But as you said, if the studies are going on, it's a good thing. I think we need to, otherwise this will definitely be another white elephant. Because I remember in one report by one of the former director generals of irrigation.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question? Yeah, now in most of the speeches, it was said that the water could be the trigger of conflicts. I have a feeling that at the surface level, it may be true. But at a deeper level, it is more about the livelihood options than the water. I mean, I don't think farmers are hellbound in doing cultivation. They want some livelihood option. So water is a means of livelihood. So therefore, I would say rather than trying to solve the water issue, if we try to solve the livelihood options, the water issue will eventually solve. So the trigger is not really the water, but it's like livelihood. Can we take it in that fashion? That's what I want to raise.
Actually, it's a good question. So over the last 2-3 years time, I was also wondering about that one. There should be policies with regard to handle these issues and conflicts beyond any question. That should be established. On the other hand, in Sri Lankan context, we have this rich and this long historical hydraulic civilization. As you mentioned, that can be fulfilled if we have a community with rich productions and other things. Automatically, all the other problems will solve among the water users society. That's right, because we observed that some of the area we practice smart agricultural system. So these young farmers are involved now. They, especially in area also, they are now very happy. So that is the one part of the game that can be solved, giving them a more livelihood opportunity and opening up new market system, and even furthermore moving further. We have communicated with the exporters also, this Ambul Kesel in Udawala area. So now they are engaged with that task also. They are very happy about their this livelihood systems, and they are getting more income. So automatically the happiness among the farmers will surface if you manage this one way. That's right.
I think, Mr. Kamaladas, I have to disagree with you. If you're thinking only farmers, farming, we are in trouble. Livelihood means industries, tourism has to come in. What we talked about, they also need a lot of water. They need a lot of water. You know, tourists need about 300, 400 liters per day, right? So those livelihood opportunities will create demand for water. Again, water comes into the picture if you move away from the agriculture. In the developed countries, take for instance China, they were agricultural country and they were using the bulk of the water. And because of the water policy and industrialization, urbanization, they want to shift water from agriculture to urban area. Without conflicts, they did it. And the farmers, by strict control of water, they have increased the yield as well. And the engineers also benefited by doing so. Their salaries gone up. Farmers paying like so in the telephone, you pay in advance, prepaid water services to provide. So the water is not, if you're thinking water as an agriculture means, we are ending it there. But it's not the case. For every kind of livelihood, you need water. That's where the conflict. That's why I said health, agriculture, food production, energy, environment, all that needs water. Yeah.
sectors probably. Now, I know agriculture contributes only 7.8% to the national economy. And now if you take tourism, it contributes about 12.6. I'm talking about the 2019 figures. So that means economically speaking, tourism contributes very high compared to agriculture. So this is exactly my point. I mean, what I'm trying to say is we have to look at the water as a livelihood means. So it need not be agriculture alone. It could be tourism, it could be industry, anything. But what I'm trying to say is if we just try to take water as the trigger without the sectors, you know, I mean, people want an opportunity to live. Now that opportunity has to be ensured.
Yeah, but foundation is water. For any kind of livelihood, you need water.
Exactly. But
So then-
but without looking as water per se, without looking at the current sectoral allocation of water, we look at water in a different way. This is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. The latter statement, water has multiple uses. We need to consider from that perspective. Unfortunately or fortunately, water resource development in this country was based on agricultural development for food security. That's why the water resource development, if you talk, the irrigation department is the key. To my mind, irrigation department does water resource development instead of irrigation development. Projects are being done, but water resources would be key. So they are, because of the tie between irrigation and water resource development, we can't see beyond even drinking water. That's where the conflict comes in. Hydropower comes into conflict. So we need to think broader. Water as a resource for agriculture, resource for drinking, resource for energy generation, resource for tourism, rearing fish, environment. Water as a resource, not as for irrigation purpose. We need to get out of that mentality. Thank you for raising that.
No, I have to say this, and now they are going to close this Zoom link. The participants who are coming from the Zoom, please, there is a form for you to fill before you leave the meeting. Otherwise, there will be a certificate for you. If you would like to get that certificate, please fill that Google form. And within 1 or 2 minutes time, the Zoom the platform will be closed by the ISL. Any more questions? Yes.